And the very first will be to any introduction of late items?
No late items.
There are none. Adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Jim, seconded by Bob. All those in favor? Thank you. And approval of adoption of the minutes. So moved by Jim, seconded by Bob. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go straight to reports. And Mr. Corson.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn over to Steve very quickly, but the purpose of today was to really review the last part of the strategy, the section we can get a chance to look at our previous meeting, but we're also looking for direction from the task force on really any aspects of the strategy, so we can wrap this up hopefully and get a final draft done the next week or two, with a goal of taking the draft to the Governance and Priority Committee meeting on December the 14th for Council's review. We'll keep working on the external agency probably in January and February, but we'd like to kind of wrap the strategy up, if possible, before Christmas. So Steve, if you want to take the folks through the amendments you've made to the draft since we last saw it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's what we've done from the first draft is added the action plan at the end, and again, as per our last meeting, I don't plan to go through this in a lot of detail. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of the 6 focus areas, and just laying out the resource commitments, the timing, and sort of the expected outcome for each of these. Now there's a package of specific actions within each one of these strategies. So in some cases, those resource commitments and the timing has been split out, if you will. But in general, this action plan is for a 3-year period. So typically, on an economic development strategy, we would identify that first 3-year period as sort of the priority, if you will. And each year, the agency would come in, pick up this action plan, and actually create an annual work plan. And then that annual work plan, of course, becomes a song sheet for that particular year. So the action plan is really meant to give the agency a leg up on what it's going to prioritize for that particular year. So we've done that in the timing. Again, we had a question last week about where are the priorities here. I think that you can see the priorities, at least in a chronological sense. Some strategies need to be rolled out before others need to be rolled out. But generally speaking, there is no prioritization in this action plan in terms of this is more important than that. Again, the prioritization is in a chronological sense in terms of which ones are going to be rolled out before the others. So I'll leave that sort of as a general way of explaining how this is done. I'd be happy to answer any questions about what exactly we're looking at here with this action plan and any of the details within it.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up then.
Fine bunch today.
It's too early in the morning.
So Steve,
Okay.
if I may.
Okay, I've got Kathy will be next.
Go ahead, I'll let Kathy go
No,
first.
Kathy, go ahead.
Morning, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a look at all these priorities, and similar to what Dave was saying the last time, everything is jammed into 2022 with a little bit in 2021, pardon me, and then it was a little bit into 2022. And I didn't really do a lot of math, it's not my strength, but, you know, it was $400,000 in projects in 2021, which, I don't think that the group would be equipped to administer that many projects over the period of a year. And that's on top of it, my concern is it's a lot of money tied up, and I don't think that it's reasonable. So somehow we need to shrink the priorities to over, like it's a 10-year plan, right? So make it the first launch a longer period of time, and looking at prioritizing what's urgent to get right out of the gate, to get some quick wins and low-hanging fruit and quick successes. I think that if we spend the first year with this new group just doing research projects and pulling together materials, that there's going to be some challenges with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim.
Okay, well, mine was just a minor thing, and I'll take this off so you can hear me. Mine was just a minor thing in that somewhere in the plan it mentions NPC, and then the action plan is NPA, and I think before we present to council we better have a consistent name. So I read it as the Nanaimo Prosperity Agency or the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. So at some point in time we need to determine before we go to council as to what the name is actually going to be.
Okay, thank you. Bob.
I'd just like to build on Kathy's comments. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I do think we need to identify our top 5 so that this organization has got a really clear focus in terms of where they start. And I think what's laid out in this action plan is a good shopping list of things for the new organization to choose from. But I believe there's enough resources around this table and on this screen to identify that top 5 so it really can get up and running quickly. So, we have listed those in the past, but you know, I think it wouldn't hurt to list them one more time so that there's a really clear starting point.
Thank you. Yes, Dave. And then Jason.
Wait, you're on mute.
Dave, you need to unmute.
Dave, you need to unmute. Okay.
Okay, guys, I've already kind of stated that I think we need to have the priorities laid out a little bit more clearly, but as it relates to the action plan, the one item that I was particularly concerned about was the infrastructure plan for 2022. I think that's way too late. It's likely if any infrastructure funding is going to come available related to the pandemic, it's going to happen in 2021. And so I really think someone needs to be moved up as a priority for the infrastructure funding. And then just specifically related to the airport, in the transportation cargo logistics section, there really is no mention of the airport except for saying we exist. And so I would like to have something in there to indicate that we have 50 hectares of surplus land that can be developed for both commercial and light industrial purpose, and that the focus on the air side would be on cargo. And I would like to think that the agency would be an advocate and a supporter of helping us move that forward.
Good, thank you. Jason.
I have one more thing.
Oh, Dave.
In the business climate section, I really would like stronger language in there to say that the agency needs to work with the city to improve on the permitting process. And I know this is an ongoing exercise right now, but I think we need to at least acknowledge that this needs to improve for the economic development to improve.
Good point.
That's it.
Thank you. Jason? You're muted. Muted.
I switched from my laptop because people couldn't hear me, and then I can't hit the mute button on my phone. I agree with a lot of what's being said, Kathy and Bob, and I can't help but want to ask the question, would it be more time appropriate to find a way to do more of a deep dive on each one of these topics with focus groups? Because this is kind of the future framework of this, and each one of these components is important. The layout of them is important. I think you can mix quick wins with long-term and start them in parallel. So I think there may be some value in having more concentrated focus group discussions on each one of these, because I don't know that this group and in this setting it can really be dialed into effectively taking everybody's thoughts and comments and actually having a meaningful dial in. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of individual tasks within the strategies, and I'd like to see that if we could keep the strategies at a higher level, and then the tasks within that more focused in a separate place. So just the group to consider.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else? Doug?
I wasn't sure if I was going to get to speak right away or just put in line. I had actually I had 3 general observations, and then as I was scrolling through finding them, I found the 4th one. The 4th one is minor, but maybe I'll save it for the end. So at the task force workshops and again at our meeting last week, there were comments about making sure that the Sonoma First Nation was well integrated with this strategic plan, and there were some specific recommendations about having Indigenous added here, and I don't see those changes in this version, and I think they do need to be added in. I think everyone has spoken about action planning, and I think perhaps the consultants returned this with the list is maybe an indication of them saying that they are not in the best, perhaps not the best position to have that, if it is the first year work plan, to have some indication coming forward, and perhaps that falls back on the task force itself. I'm not sure, given the timeline that Bill has suggested and that I agree with, that we go back to focus groups to do that, but I think we have to identify some solutions so that when this hits the council table, it is a 100-page comprehensive background document, but with a select number of key talking points that are how this task force recommends that we move forward. And that third item was and this may come up later in the conversation, I had in the section on measurement, I was a bit disappointed in what showed up in this version of the document, not being more specific about how that measurement would occur. My read that it just says that we really should keep track of these things, but there's much more guidance than that. And I think one way or another we need to deal with that more explicitly. And I do recall that because there is a conversation about circular economy metrics, etc., that would be incorporated into that section. I didn't see that there. And my last one, so those 3 items are things that I had expected to see in this version. I don't see them. The last item was just caught my eye, I guess because I was in a grumpy mood on page 66 of the report. Under the heading, organizing for delivery, we have a picture of repaving the Pearson Bridge, which is not emblematic of where we want to go to. And so I think it wouldn't bother me to see that substituted with photographic support that was more indicative of where we expect to be in the future. So those are my 4 points.
Thank you, Doug. Andre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo Doug's point there, I was also looking for much more in the measurement department, as to how economic for the community will be measured going forward, which I believe will be an in-house function, but I think that needs to be alluded to a little bit more clearly how that reporting happens. And then how, also on top of that, how not only do we measure the economy, but how do we measure the effectiveness of this organization. So there has to be more time spent on that. Some minor things is where we talk about, on the page here, but where we talk about working with the health and homeless task force, we talk about the action being working, putting money into a homelessness study or something along those lines. But really it's not, I don't think that's really what they're looking for. I think that's part of it, but I think really what we're looking for is working with people who don't have as much opportunity in employment, right? So I don't think it's strictly around homelessness. I think it's a little bit more complex than that. And also just as a kind of a minor piece here is when it talks about resources committed, I saw under First Nations reconciliation that it was listed as minor, and I didn't think that was overly appropriate, so I think that should probably be changed as something that we don't spend minor time on, but we actually look at full consideration.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that one, Andre?
I found on page 70, under the action plan, First Nations economic reconciliation, where it just says minor time. I'm not, and no reader committee, I just don't know if that reads appropriately. I think that it should be something that is well established at the beginning so that we can work together. So I just didn't like the way it read, I guess.
Yeah, I can agree with that one.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Just back to that First Nations one, it also states that this is a goal for 2022. It's got to be a goal from day one.
Yep. Oh. I agree. So if nobody, I'll put in my 2 cents there. Definitely, I would say this from day one and ongoing, and definitely not minor, because there will be economic development within First Nations. And and the Health and the Housing Task Force, I did notice that it was mentioned in collaboration about working on environment and people, but I believe you're right. The Health and the Housing Task Force is more than just housing the homeless. It's about us having responsibility for all social issues, right? And working with this group. And there will be money under health and housing. That's the thing, is that United Way and different not-for-profit agencies have an incredible amount of money to help develop communities as well. So I think that's what the intent was, to work together on all of that. Jim, sorry.
It's okay. So a couple of comments. First with the Health and Housing Task Force under Social and Environmental Capital. I'm just wondering, it states moderate time, 20,000 feasibility for a homeless project. I don't read that as being a study. Maybe I'm getting this wrong. I think it's more that maybe we come up with something that will actually lead to employment for some of these people, more employment that hopefully will drive them to be able to get into housing. But I agree that whoever said that it's kind of pointless to be spending money on a survey or another report, because there's a lot of them coming out of the Health and Housing Task Force, and I don't think we want to be competing with them. And then on the other topic with regard to First Nations, I really think we need to either sit down with Chief and some of their council or some of their staff to find out exactly what it is that we can work together on, because I think that's part of the problem when we just say minor time and for 2022. I agree it has to be quicker, but I think we need to have some ideas either from them or come up with some suggestions to take to them for their agreement or not. And I think that's where the priority should be, as opposed to trying to find some means of strategy implementation. The other thing that further back, while I've got that topic on the table, on page 42, which I know we went over before, but it says work with the three nations, Tanawa, Sanemo, and Chemainus, and I'm getting the impression from my discussions with Sanemo is that they would prefer to be the lead. So I think maybe we should be talking to them first to find out their suggestion on speaking to the other two nations. It's only my insight in having our meeting with them previously, so thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Jason? Mute? You need to unmute.
I think something for me right now, and it's not so much the content, the way the content is organized in this document. I find it a bit confusing, and I think it could be a little more streamlining. When I think of strategy and I think of strategic partnerships, I see the Health and Housing Task Force. Are those not strategic partnerships? And I wonder if the document, when we talked about having far too many goals or far too many tasks, and can we, because earlier in the document, this action plan stems from the earlier part of the document, so is there any way we can try to streamline the document so that our strategic partnerships show those strategic partners instead of having them all as separate strategies and having them as sub-strategies or tasks within each one of those, so that we can have a more clear picture as to how they all fit together? Research and data is under business development. I'm seeing it under other categories as well. So for me, I'm wondering if we could spend some time to streamline the document a little bit more so that it's more cohesive.
Thank you. Did I have Dave? Did you have your hand up?
Sure. I find that, I've already said, I find the document difficult to figure out what's important and what's not important, but I was thinking that one way that we could state our recommendation as it relates to the priorities, at least for year one, would that the task force would have some kind of transmittal letter before the introduction that would say, here's what we think is important to be accomplished in the early stages of the agency. That might help us move this along. It's just a suggestion. I don't really know if it's a good idea.
Okay. Kathy?
I'm muted. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just back to what Jason was saying on the strategic partnerships, and I'm trying to flip back through the document. You might need some help with that. Under the principles, did we have... No, we didn't really have anything. We had collaboration, but not strategic partnerships or anything like that. So is the area of strategic partnerships one of the strategies, which is, and maybe the other part of that strategy is building the competency for the two organizations, both the city and the, whatever the name of the other group we finally decided on, is going to be, and put that one of the major things that we're working on, because all of what we don't have in this list of the strategies is who's the lead and who's involved. And that's probably part of the deep dive that needs to happen at the staff level, or at, even including our group. But what are the other groups that need to be brought into Sandbox right at the outset to participate in these things moving forward? So I don't see that the strategic partnerships and the health of the organizations is reflected in really any of the 6 strategies. So maybe it's something that stands alone that comes as a result of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Corson,
Thank you, Chair.
that's a lot of information.
Yeah, well, yeah, I got 4 pages of notes, that's good.
I hope Steve was taking good notes.
Yeah, well, that's why we have the task force, is to get your feedback and comments, right? So this is very helpful. A couple of things come to mind. I think it would be helpful to maybe get a smaller group of folks together. I'm happy to nominate a few people, but if there's people who'd like to be involved, it'd be good next week, I think, to maybe sit down and we can work on that action plan in the back. I think I really agree with the First Nations reconciliation piece. I think that is kind of a critical element we want to make sure is strong in here, and having a conversation with Erilyn and Ian Simpson, I think, from Petrigliffe would be very helpful to make sure that that's captured and they can see value in this document. And I agree, prioritizing a plan for what we're going to do in 2021 is important. And I don't know if we're going to have a fully resourced 2021, so we need to be realistic about what we can actually do in 2021. And as Steve said, maybe by 2022, then we have a more deep, then the agency and the city staff can then prepare the 2022 work plan this time next year. But I would like to hit the ground running with, here's what we hope to accomplish in 2021, and being realistic about it, and not setting goals that are out of whack, but things we can actually do. And we have capacity to do things. I think we have enough. I think we have enough funding to do most of the things that are in here, to be honest with you. So my initial thought would be to nominate Kathy and Jason and Doug, perhaps, if you'd like to meet next week, and we could kind of go through this in more detail, then I'd report back to the task force with a revised strategy. But obviously, Bob, anyone's welcome to attend. I just was randomly picking people.
How does that sound to, well, I guess Jason, Kate, Kathy, Doug first, but anybody, how does that sound?
Well, I'm certainly happy to nominate Dave Devan, Andre Sullivan, and Bob Moss. If not, I will do whatever can be helpful. At least fine, and I do that sometime next week. But I think that some of those other names are, well, anyway, I don't.
Well, everybody on the task force is very welcome. I just, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to single anyone out.
Yeah, we're just conscious of people's time and energy, but if people would like to volunteer, that.
And we can't have more than.
Yes, I was just going to chime in and say we can't have a quorum, so it has to be less than 7 people.
Okay, so I'll leave that up to you to arrange, Bill? Or
Yeah,
do you want to know now, concrete?
maybe if people could email Alyssa and I by the end of the day, and then we can then let people know who's interested. I kind of view this as maybe I'd like to spend a half a day kind of doing a deep dive into it, and then see if we need another half day after that. And do that next week.
Maybe the intro that you're speaking of, Bill, could be accommodated by the people who are sending in their own top 5. And then that can be all fed into the conversation as well.
Yeah, we'll send out what we have as our top 5 now, and then people can let us know if that works, or if there's something we need to adjust.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes?
A question on the action plan. Bill, were they vetted by the city staff as part of this document, or is this really a consultant's lens of the priorities and sequencing that needs to happen?
Yeah, so this is from Steve, direct, so we have
Okay.
not gone through this, so again, I think that's why it'd be helpful for the task force to, there's a lot of detail to go through here, it's hard to do it on a call like this, I think it's easier to do sitting down, and it's hard for Steve to,
Yeah.
these are challenging times with everything remotely.
Then my question to Steve and you is, are these in a sequence that you need to do the one thing before another, and is that the way that they are set out from the consultant's point of view? You don't need to answer now, but if they are, then I think we need to understand, if we're going to do a little bit more work on this, what do you have to do first? Essential first, day one, start getting out of the gate in order to build, because there's no point going on a sales mission without preparing the research, the marketing, the data, yada, yada, yada. So if there's some sequencing in here that we need to understand, I think that would be important. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Turley, I think Councillor Turley and I would like to go meet with Sunemu in the near future as well,
Yeah.
if that's okay with the task force.
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely, that's important. Very important part of this strategy. And anything, and Andre?
Yeah, just a question about process here. So should we come back in a few weeks' time with the revised document here? Does that go to council, and is that the first look by council other than our council table here? Do they have, what is their, should they have any significant changes or input, what does that look like?
Mr. Corson?
Thank you, Chair. So this would be going to a governance and priority committee meeting, and that gives council a chance to debate it and talk about it. It's just really an initial conversation, so I would expect there might be some revisions or changes suggested by council. And that would just put us in a position where early next year we can make those and wrap it up, get the strategy done in hopefully January.
Perfect.
While we're working on the final pieces of the external agency.
Okay. Jim?
Sorry, having trouble with my hearing aids here. So I guess the question I have, and I should know the answer, and unfortunately I don't, have we included in the draft budget to date any funding for this? I think we have.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So,
And you're also carrying over from this
From
year.
this year.
so we're not, as far as finances are concerned, we're not starting from square one. We have really budget.
You should have $500,000 for the external agency and over 300,000 internal. So you're starting at around 800,000 next year.
The other topic, if I may,
Yes.
Chair, is with regard to tourism. I'm sure everybody is probably aware that the contract with Tabby expires at the end of this year, and they're not renewing. So the thought, and this is only a thought, it's nothing's come to the council to my knowledge, is that we have the hotelier group, whose name I forget at the moment.
NHA. The NHA.
NHA, okay, there's too many NHA with their probably greatly diminished revenue from the room tax, that may be in the best position to, at least in the interim, look after tourism. Now, I'm just speaking as an individual councillor here, so rather than us having to jump in right away to have to worry about tourism issues in the first year to the mandate of the new agencies.
Okay. That will be coming forward to us in the near future. Was there anything else? We might get out early. enjoy our day. Anything else, Mr. Corson?
No, Chair, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, so we'll wait for emails to Mr. Corson.
Alyssa and I will email the group, confirming our 5 priorities, and then seeing who wishes to be in our little group for next week, and we'll give some dates and times that work. Some suggested times for next week that where people might want to get together.
Great.
Everyone is invited as long as it's less than 7.
And for council, we're about to go into an extremely busy time with budgets. So just to let everybody know.
That's why I didn't put you 2 on the list.
And
It's just one clarification really, because I heard some comments that ran contrary to that. We are still working towards that December 13th meeting. And because I heard some comments about, well, we'll see revised and updated report, and I'm not quite sure how that meshes with that timeline.
Mr. Corson.
I always like a challenge, so I recognize it's ambitious, Doug, but I'd like to try to see if we can get there.
My comments are entirely in support of those efforts. It didn't appear to me that everybody on the task force was quite, if I count 3 weeks back, what's the deadline for the report submission for a December 13th meeting, for example?
Well, if I don't ask Sky, I'll tell you it's a week before. If I ask Sky, she'll tell me it's probably 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, it's December 1st.
Yeah.
Will the task force be meeting again before the report?
Yes, this task force would have to meet before it would go to GBC. You'd have to, I want to make sure everybody in this task force is comfortable with what's going forward. And if people aren't comfortable with it, then we would delay it until January.
Till January, because with having to have more review with the action plans, etc., it might be ambitious to try and make that December 13th meeting. But I would rather do this properly than to rush anything, right? This is our kick at the can here in getting it right, so, thank you.
Does Steve have any suggestions or concerns?
Steve, over to you.
Yeah, there's, I made lots of notes. I think most of the requested changes and clarification in the action plan, I've got some ideas and some thoughts on how that can be done. So I don't anticipate any issues there. I sense your frustration of looking at sort of what's really a large document and trying to put a chronology to it and a priority to it. So, but the action plan was a first draft. I think I'll talk to Bill about how we can, with some minor modifications, make an improvement to address most of the comments we heard today. So I think between that and your own top 5 discussion, I think you'll have a much better sense of what has to be done first and the sequencing involved. And there definitely is some sequencing involved in these strategies. But, I think it makes sense to let you guys have a crack at the top 5, and then we can refine it from there. But no, they've been good suggestions today. I think I'd like for a better strategy. So, again, I'll work with Bill to get this next draft out. There's no bottlenecks on our end. We can certainly turn around things prior to the 13th. So I think from our end, we'll be okay on the timing.
Thank you. Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the thought that just came to mind was, we've got dates 2021, 22, and some in 23, and I'm wondering to allow for some flexibility with regard to the potential staff of the new agency, that we not focus too much on items beyond 2022, because things could change in our world overnight. The new staff could have suggestions, there could be a lot of things happen between now and then, and I hate to see, in other words, I believe it needs to be somewhat flexible as opposed to this is the timeline, we have to stick to it no matter what. Just my thoughts.
Nobody else?
Nobody argued with me, amazing.
Shall I ask for a move for adjournment?
Bob's turn.
Bob's moving, anybody seconding? Jim seconding, everybody in favor?
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.